These people want a pure Aryan nation.
Many of them were willing to do anything to punish and kill people who were not part of the white race.
There'll be a lot of blood running one day. America shall again become white and Christian.
But I had never encountered a group with a goal to eliminate Jews from the face of the earth and ultimately overthrow the United States government until we discovered the terrorist organization called The Order.
As a former FBI agent and chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, I had oversight of all 16 of our nation's intelligence agencies. My name is Mike Rogers. I had access to classified information gathered by our operatives, people who risked everything for the United States and our families. You don't know their faces or their names. You don't know the real stories from the people who lived the fear and the pressure until now.
I first went undercover in the FBI in about, I think it was 1967. I had specialized in the FBI in domestic terrorist cases, organized crime, and undercover. And in 1984, I was working with the mafia when an opportunity came up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It was a one-man office, and the agent that had been in Coeur d'Alene had left, and nobody was there. It's a beautiful, idyllic spot. And so I jumped on that, and along with a lot of other people, I threw my hat into the ring, and I was fortunate enough that I got selected. I packed up my gear, left the family, headed out to Coeur d'Alene, and I found my office. I got the key, opened the door. It's like a little 8x10. Nobody'd been there in months, or cobwebs going across it, and I just kind of looked at it and shook my head, and I thought, well, what did I get myself into here, you know? This is not really quite what I expected, but I was in a beautiful place. I think perhaps the reason that I was selected, or one of the reasons, is because I had domestic terrorism experience, a lot of it. I'd worked the New Left in Chicago. I'd worked the Ku Klux Klan in Alabama. So I was a likely person to step in and take a look at the group located in the Coeur d'Alene area called the Aryan Nations. They were the political arm of the Church of Jesus Christ Christian, a religious organization that believed that the Jews were the biblical enemy.
We, the white race, lost the war. A plague known as Jews won the war. This plague is poisoning our people to death.
The agent that had been in Coeur d'Alene before I got there suspected but didn't know that this organization might be involved in criminal activity. There were rumors they might be involved in terrorist-type activity as well, but we had nothing really to go on. I commenced my investigation on a somewhat full-time basis in about March of 1984, and that was just me. Nobody else in the office, nobody else working the case. And one of the very first things I did is I met with Larry Broadbent. He was undersheriff in Kootenai County, which is the county that Coeur d'Alene is located in. And Larry Broadbent had been conducting a one-man investigation of activities out at the Aryan Nations. So I sat down with Larry and I said, Larry, show me all the criminal activity that we maybe have some suspicions that they might be related to this group. And we pinpointed about 5 or 6 different crimes and probably 30 or 40 different people. That was sort of the beginning of the playbook. And after he left, I was convinced that there was more than just smoke. There was a real fire here. But I didn't know much. I really didn't know anything about what ultimately we were going to discover. And that was the fact that there was a different organization than the Aryan Nations that had committed all these crimes. Later, we would learn that it It was a religious and political terrorist organization called The Order, led by a man named Robert Matthews.
Bob Matthews was very charismatic. He was a young man in his 30s, and he'd been involved in the right-wing movement, especially the National Alliance, for years.
Jews, get the heck out of here! I didn't come all the way down here to hear you! Go over there!
He believed that the Jews were subverting the American cause and that the Jews controlled the finance, that they controlled the government, which he called the ZOG, the Zionist-occupied government. And Bob Matthews felt like, I can't let that happen. I got to do something. He wanted to eliminate Jews from the government power within the United States and ultimately overthrow the United States government. He wanted a pure Aryan nation. And he begins to recruit Aryan warriors. And he finds about 7 people within the Aryan Nation organization, and he drafts those people. And he reaches out to the covenant, sword, and arm of the Lord. And he drafts some of them, and he goes to National Alliance, and he pulls some of them in, and he goes to the Ku Klux Klan, and he gets some of them. People like Richard Scutari, Gary Lee Yarbrough, David Lane, and others. And now he had dedicated core members, which was ultimately the group known as the Order. These were the people that Bob Matthews was going to depend on to carry the war against the Jews in charge of the United States government. In September of 1983, the Order had taken their first efforts to finance themselves as Aryan warriors. Initially, they tried counterfeiting, and they did a terrible job and managed to get one of their primary leaders, Bruce Carroll Pierce, caught in their first effort to pass this counterfeit money. So after counterfeiting failed, Bob Matthews felt, as the leader of this group, he had to do something to show the others that they weren't a failure and they were going to continue forward. So he robbed a bank in December. It was a successful robbery, and he gave him a tremendous amount of confidence, and he was able to tell the others, look, I did this, and we can do this. Following right on the heels of that, Gary Yarbrough and Bruce Pierce decided, well, yeah, Bob did that, we'll do it. So the next month, they robbed the bank, and they're successful. They look at the take of their money, which is about $40,000, and they think, we're on the right track, but we're not thinking big enough. We got to plan bigger. We need to hit armored cars. The first armored car robbery they do with 4 people, and then he grows his group up. He's got 7 people for the second one in the Northgate area in Seattle, and they get away with about $200,000.
These are certainly not ordinary bank robbers. They robbed the armored car to enable them to fund their battle, not to put in their pocket, not to buy drugs. They're stealing for the cause.
The more money the Order had, the bigger threat they were to the United States government. And as a result of the armored car robberies, they were able to go out and purchase firearms, a lot of ammunition. They were becoming a very, very strong army.
By this time, Bob has become inspirational, and people are drawing to him. He's made them believe that they will be successful. At that point, they were well ahead of me. Look, I'm playing catch-up. All these things have happened, and I don't know how it all ties together. I'm still trying to put together a report that I can send to the Department of Justice that will show enough probable cause that they will allow me to do a full-scale investigation. Otherwise, I'm limited. My hands are tied. I need a team of agents. I want to develop informants. I want to get this thing moving so I got real-time information on what's happening. But I'm not allowed to do that until the Attorney General says, okay. Now, I sent my report off in June, and while I wait for the Justice Department to say, okay, Robert Matthews decides it's time to strike out against an enemy of their race. We're talking about the killing of a Jew that would be the first of many. I was chasing a terrorist organization called The Order, who were dedicated to overthrowing the United States government and eliminating Jews from the face of the earth, led by a man named Robert Matthews. And they were well ahead of me. If you look at the activities of this group, some counterfeiting and bank robberies and a couple armored car robberies, it was so obvious that over such a short period of time, they had grown so much. And I'm playing catch up. I'm sitting here trying to put all this together, and Robert Matthews decides it's time to strike out against the Jews. They come together and they say, who are our greatest Jewish influenced enemies? And the names came up like Norman Lear, a prominent producer of some comedy shows, and Morris Dees, the head of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And then they looked at a man named Alan Berg. Alan Berg was a very prominent personality in Denver, Colorado, and becoming a very prominent personality kind of throughout the country because he had his own radio show that was widely broadcast. He was a Jew, and he was a very, very obnoxious individual.
You never shut up. I got fed up with you. You never let me get a word edgewise. Get out of here.
Alan Berg got on the radio and called white supremacists on his talk show and then continually talked down to them, insulting them, laughing at their beliefs. And every time the person got ready to answer, Berg cut him off and said something insulting to them.
I'll hang up on you. Hey, Jeff, go ahead. Both of you hang up, cowards.
One of the guys from the Order, who was also head of the Klan in Colorado, was a guy named David Lane. David Lane called in, and Berg ate him up like a cheap sandwich. He went after him.
I think the Jews are still firmly in control of the Soviet Union. I think they're responsible for the murder of 50 million white Christians.
You think so, huh?
Yes, I do.
I think you're sick. I think you're pathetic. Thanks so much.
Berg has insulted this Aryan warrior, so they decide we're going to take him out.
In June of 1984, Bob Matthews made the decision to have Alan Berg assassinated. So he pulls together his team. He takes Bruce Carroll Pierce, who's going to be the trigger man, Richard Scutari, and David Lane. And they go to Denver, Colorado. And once they got there, they set up surveillance at his residence. And they wait for him.
When Berg opened the door, they opened up on him with a fully automatic Mach 10 machine gun. Berg was hit multiple times. And he died at the spot.
Was the Order a terrorist operation?
Absolutely, 100%. It didn't matter if there was mass casualties. They were willing to do anything and everything to achieve their goals.
These were very dangerous people, and they were becoming more dangerous as time progressed, which, if you look at the timeline, after they did the first 2 armored car robberies, Bruce Carroll Pierce leaves with Richard Kemp, and they go to Boise, and they bomb a Jewish synagogue. That was an act of terrorism. There was no money to be had. There was no criminal gain. It was punishment. They felt emboldened, and things escalated rapidly. In July of 1984, we learned about the armored car robbery of a Brinks truck at Ukiah, California.
It was on the last day of the Democratic Convention that was held in San Francisco in 1984. We're all sitting at a big command post, waiting for the convention to be over, and a phone call came into the command post saying, there's been an armored car robbery. When those of us in the San Francisco division got involved, we had no idea about the Order and all the players and the people involved at the time. That was a separate criminal case. So we had to get to the scene, figure out what happened, and then it started growing from there. We discovered that they scoped out where the truck would be most vulnerable, and they decided to hit the truck on the Highway 20 outside of Ukiah. And so they bought cars, they bought pickup trucks, they bought a 30-pound box of roofing nails, and they threw them out on the road. And the armored truck starts to get flat tires, and then they surround the truck. There's 2 or 3 guys holding up shotguns. They actually shot at the truck. And the shotgun blast went through the glass, hits the people inside. The truck came to a halt. They all surrounded, they climbed off their trucks and got out of their cars. And someone in one of the pickup trucks held up a cardboard sign that said, "Get out or die." And then they were able to get into the back and start pulling the money bags out. While they were doing the robbery, one of the guys was calling out time marks. 8 minutes gone, 9 minutes gone, let's finish it up. They're very disciplined. They were in and out in 10 minutes, and they got north of $3.5 million.
The Ukiah crime was perhaps one of the greatest armored car robberies of all time. For everybody else, this is a bad thing. For me, it was a breakthrough, because Bob Matthews made a huge mistake.
During the armored truck robbery, Matthews actually was holding a gun. And Bob Matthews left that gun on the front seat of the armored truck. And when we recovered the gun, it took about a week to trace it. And we discovered that it had been originally purchased by Andrew Barnhill in Montana.
And ultimately, we traced him to an address in Laclede, Idaho. We went inside that residence, and we found lots of information.
They found automatic weapons, large quantity of cash, receipts, IDs, and other information that tied him into the order.
We also found a milk carton, and the milk carton had some personal items, and then buried down in the bottom is an article on the Northgate Bank robbery. Why do you keep one article on one thing like that in a place where your most personal possessions are located? Because you had something to do with it. At this point, I feel like we got enough. Let's expand our case. But I gotta wait for the Justice Department to say, okay, now I sent my report off in June. Now we're in July, and I sat and I waited until they finally came back and they said, yes, it's a go. Now the case was about to greatly expand once we had this authority to do the full-scale domestic security investigation. The FBI is going to pour into this investigation, and we did.
At the time I was on leave and I was stationed in Providence, Rhode Island. I got a call from the office. I was to report for duty the following day and to bring a rifle. I had never worked domestic terrorism cases to that point in my career. My general impression from reading everything that I was reading and we were receiving in was they were very sophisticated and they were very dangerous people.
Initially, when we arrived there, we realized we were investigating things that happened last month, that we had finally realized had been done by the order. The first thing I did is call back to FBI headquarters and say, send me 20 agents. These people are doing bad stuff, and they're getting bigger. They're spreading all over the western United States.
Now I had a team. The ball game had changed. We were now in the game. I commenced my investigation in about March of 1984. And finally, in July, I got the authorization to do a full-scale domestic security investigation of the terrorist organization called The Order. And we're getting ready to expand based upon the Ukiah robbery. So now the FBI began to saturate the area and gather intelligence.
All of the investigative steps were just kind of logical. You know, where would these people stay and where did these trucks come from? Because we started with the trucks, backtracking, and the guy said, hey, I met a guy and sold him a truck. He was staying at the Motel 6 or whatever, and just started pulling those records. And we discovered that they all stayed in the Santa Rosa area. They stayed at a Super 8 and a bunch of low-rent hotels. So the fellows in Santa Rosa went out and pulled all the phone numbers from all the phone booths around all these hotels and put them into a database and then started correlating. And we started coming up with numbers that were called from the phones.
And that was amazing intelligence. And so when I got a call telling me that calls were made to a Jerry Oldbu, just north of Coeur d'Alene in Sandpoint. Immediately, I drove to where that phone was located at that residence, and we took up a surveillance position. And after a few hours, a guy comes walking out of the residence. And I looked at him through the binoculars and I said, "That's not a Jerry Oldbu, that's Gary Yarbrough. That's the same guy that's in photographs that we acquired of individuals that belong to the order." And we immediately directed 2 teams of agents specifically on observation of Gary Yarbrough. Now, what we had to do at this point was patiently wait. We had gathered a great deal of intelligence information, but I still wasn't in a position to arrest anybody.
We had evidence that linked certain members of the group to criminal activities, but we didn't have sufficient evidence where we felt like we could go to a grand jury, get a warrant, and indict.
So we were looking and looking for a break to get through that logjam, and the break was Thomas Martinez being arrested in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for passing counterfeit money.
Robert Matthews, in the early formation of the Order days, had been counterfeiting money on the Aryan Nations presses. And Matthews at the time was in the process of trying to recruit additional members. One of those members was an individual that he knew from the National Alliance by the name of Thomas Martinez. Martinez lived in the Philadelphia area, and he was provided with U.S. currency that was counterfeit. He was instructed by Matthews and others in the order to take those bills and to pass them. When he did, he got caught. He was paid a visit by the Secret Service and arrested.
After they had their initial interview with Martinez, they recognized that there was something bigger than these few bills of counterfeit that had been passed. So they called the FBI.
They said, "Well, I got a guy who's here in Philadelphia arrested for counterfeiting for this guy, Bob Matthews." And they said, "Do you want to talk to this guy?" So we said, "Damn right we want to talk to this guy. Charge him with everything you can charge him with so that when we get there, we'll be the good guys and tell him, hey, boy, we got a deal for you." It worked.
Once he decided to cooperate, he opened the doors and he supplied a lot more pieces of this puzzle we're trying to put together.
Who was responsible for the armored car robbery in Seattle? Who participated in the Ukiah robbery? All of these questions could be answered by Tom Martinez because he had been solicited by Bob, and Bob had told him about all these different things that they had done and they were doing. And it was Martinez that basically introduced us to the book, The Turner Diaries. It's a fictional account of a group of people just like we're talking about that ultimately managed to overthrow the United States government.
September the 16th, 1991. Today it finally begins. After all these years of talking, and nothing but talking, we have finally taken our first action. We're at war with the system, and it is no longer a war of words. In the book, they're not talking about overthrowing the government, they're overthrowing it.
And Bob Matthews took this book as his Bible, and he followed it. So, in the Turner Diaries, the characters did counterfeiting, armored car robberies, executions, and that's what the Order did. So, Martinez was a wealth of information. You might say we had a lot of little pieces, and he was able to move them around for us and show us where they fit. Once we had the agreement made with Tom Martinez that he would help us, we knew we had to be patient. Like the hunter, we had to wait for Bob Matthews to contact and instruct Martinez. In the meantime, we had not been idle. We were moving at lightning speed, and we greatly increased our surveillance of Gary Yarbrough.
So we let a couple of agents go up to Yarbrough's house. And all of a sudden they see Yarbrough, and he fired 3 shots at him. By shooting at those 2 people, he committed a crime called assault on a federal officer. That gave us the ability to get an arrest warrant for Gary for shooting at the 2 agents and a search warrant for Gary's house within like a day. So we went to Gary's house to arrest him.
But he saw us coming, and he bailed out of his house, wearing nothing but a t-shirt and a pair of pants.
Gary escaped that night. But the astounding amount of evidence and information we got upon searching Gary Yarbrough's house was unbelievable.
We found all kinds of documents that were written by the order, command structure, and all the members, and their code names are all identifiable. Now we got the whole story. Now we can see everything.
We saw guns, dynamite, ammunition, swastikas on the wall, and both me and my partner saw a MAC-10 submachine gun, which we knew had been the type of weapon used to kill Berg. And we both said, "You don't think they're stupid enough to kept that weapon, do you?" And we both said, "Well, we better find out." And the next morning I had a phone call from the firearms examiner in Washington and said, "That is the gun that killed Alan Berg."
How did you feel?
Just total exhilaration, just total gotcha. Talk about physical evidence. They kept this gun killed Alan Berg.
Here we are now, chasing one crime after another, and finally we've caught up. We felt like we had enough information to successfully bring forth criminal charges and receive a conviction. There was no more cat and mouse game. We were just right on their heels, and they were running from us now. After we had the confrontation with Yarbrough in October 1984, we gathered a great deal of intelligence information that finally started to put together the little pieces of the puzzle that were missing. And now we felt like we had enough information to successfully bring forth criminal charges. There was no more cat and mouse game. We were just right on their heels. And I wanted to take them all down as soon as possible, because they were growing in numbers with a goal of overthrowing the United States government and eliminating Jews from the face of the earth.
They were headed wrong, and they were headed wrong fast. They robbed these armored cars. They shot this talk show host. They were following the Turner Diaries like a map. It was a scary thought, because the principal character in the Turner Diaries blew up FBI headquarters. There was only one way to stop them, and that was to put as much pressure on them as we could, prove the crimes that they committed, and then take them down.
And we knew that our informant, Tom Martinez, was our link to Matthews and his followers. In about October 1984, we found out a phone call came in to Martinez with instructions as to where to go to meet Bob. And that was what we were waiting for. And so the real purpose in having Martinez meet with Matthews is in hopes that Matthews is going to bring Martinez into the core of the group, and we'll have a lot of the members there will be able to make significant arrests. But we're going to arrest whomever he meets with.
The day before Thanksgiving of 1984, Martinez flew to Portland. We had agents inside the airport that were doing the surveillance. And when Martinez arrived, Matthews walks up by him. Martinez sees him, and Martinez basically follows Matthews out. Our guys detected a counter-surveillance. There was a guy that was hanging around, kind of back, but they could tell that he was watching Martinez and Matthews. When they went outside, this guy gets in the car. As it turns out, that guy was Gary Yarbrough. As they're driving, Martinez says, "I already made a reservation at such and such a Holiday Inn," and Matthews says, "Don't worry about that. We've already made reservations for you at the place that we're staying." And that turned out to be the Capri Motel.
That scared Tom, because that was an immediate kink in the plans, and he's thinking to himself, "Oh man, they're going to take me someplace where the FBI won't know where I'm at." But we tracked him to the motel, and we managed to get a call to him to let him know that we knew where he was. And a raid was planned on the motel. Martinez was told to stay in his room, not to leave for any reason.
Daylight comes, and we were getting ready to make a bust. All of a sudden, I hear this commotion.
As it happened, Matthews walked out just before the raid was to take place.
I don't know what he saw, but something spooked him.
And he jumped and ran.
Matthews ran down to the stairway and takes off and runs across the parking lot. Didn't have a chance to get to his car. He was on foot and he was brilliant. In the meantime, I could hear noise coming from the back. I ran to the back window and I look out. There's Yarborough hanging from the windowsill. As soon as he hits the ground, he's got pistols jammed at him from every different angle. One thing I noted was there was hand grenades sitting on a nightstand. And I saw some long weapons in there as well. So the agent who went in the room with me, he had seen Matthews run down the street. And he says, one of the guys ran down the street. So, well, let's go. So we start chasing after him. Two other agents were in front of us chasing after Matthews. And Matthews turned beside this house. And he was waiting at the corner, waiting for the first guy to come across. As soon as that first agent came around the corner, he spotted Matthews. And he went into a slide like you do in baseball. When he did, Matthews opens up on him with 45. The bullet went through his foot.
And the next pursuing agent with a shotgun fired back at Matthews and only hit his hand. Matthews' hand looked like a cartoon thing where you hold your hand up and you can see through it. It was just mangled.
I start tracking him, and I'm looking for blood splatter. And at that point, all I could think of was the hand grenades I seen in that room. And I'm thinking, he's gonna lob a grenade on us. But you do what you gotta do. He goes into this heavily vegetated area, and I'm following him. But the last I saw of Matthews was his blood trail, and I had no idea where he went.
We got Gary Yarbrough, but Bob Matthews escaped through us because we had no idea where he would go next.
It was a scary thought, because somebody like Matthews, he might be hiding out, but he's waiting until he can get his army together and throw the next punch. So we had to locate him and take him down. Fast. In the fall, 1984, after the shootout in Portland, the last I saw of Matthews was his blood trail, and I had no idea where he went.
Bob Matthews escaped through us because we had no idea where he would go next.
Somebody like Matthews, he might be hiding out, but he's waiting until he can get his army together and throw the next punch. So we had to locate him and take him down, fast.
Fortunately, within a matter of a few days, through some informants that developed, we were able to locate the whereabouts of Bob Matthews and 6 members of the order to his hideout in Whidbey Island on the Puget Sound in Washington. When I got to Whidbey Island, it was December the 7th, 1984. And I didn't know this, but on November the 25th, Bob Matthews had pulled all of his people together into their hideouts at Whidbey Island, and he drafted a letter to the United States Congress, and it was a declaration of war. So Bob Matthews was committed to fight to the end, but so were we.
When the cell was located, they were staying in 2 different houses. The houses were approached. People in one house all surrendered. When they approached Matthews' house, Matthews was given an opportunity to surrender, refused to do so.
Come out with your hands up.
We did everything we could to try to get him out of there. And when we decided that Bob wouldn't come out, we made a plan to go in and get him.
Dozens of FBI agents armed with automatic weapons and dressed in full combat fatigues have been bussed to the scene.
Bob was upstairs, and he had multiple weapons and lots of ammunition. So we moved in and we used sound grenades, blew the glass out, and then I heard the gunfire. He began to shoot indiscriminately through the building. I remember on one occasion, I was standing by the window with a weapon and somebody yelled from the wood line, "Look out, he's in the window above you." And I crouched down and I looked up with my weapon, and I realized that the bullets had just come out over my head and hit the ground next to me, but we couldn't get a view of him. So we pulled back and we waited till that night. That night, we put a flare into the bottom of the house so we could light up the bottom so they couldn't see to get out. And once again, tried to get him to surrender, but he responded with gunfire. We had helicopters come in over the house, and he shot at the helicopters. While all this was going on, the house caught fire. The fire was from the flare that was in the bottom of the house. The shooting continued all night. Rounds being fired by Bob, and then rounds just going off indiscriminately. It was a war zone. At daylight, I walked up to the cabin and I found Bob's body lying in the rubble. And the entire house was destroyed. Whatever evidence was there was no longer there.
He came to a fiery end, just like the fictional character, Turner, in the book of the Turner Diaries. Once he'd done that, he was exalted. I mean, he was like the sainthood of the neo-Nazis, you know? He was a martyr.
Just like an ISIS martyr. That's exactly the kind of situation we had in the order. That dedication and that kind of fervor makes those people he recruited say to themselves, I'm going to be like Bob Matthews.
Bob deliberately sacrificed his life, knowing that the blood of martyrs stirs a people.
After Bob died, there was a general belief amongst the followers of the order that it would only take a spark to reignite the whole thing. And so we immediately began a very intensified manhunt to locate the others. If we didn't do it right and if we didn't do it fast, a lot of good people were going to be hurt and a lot of people were going to be affected by the actions of this group. Following the shootout in Whidbey Island, Matthews was dead, and 6 members of the order were in custody, and we immediately began a very intensified manhunt to locate the others.
Federal officials were announcing today they are cracking down on a neo-Nazi ring they say is operating in several western states.
Everybody fled in 100 directions. They scattered like cockroaches, and we had hundreds of agents working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
They couldn't even plan to do a criminal act. They were just planning how to stay out of our grasp because we were just right behind them.
When Matthews burned up, they were looking for a leader. Bob was dead, and he was the absolute iron-fisted leader. He made the decisions. He was gone.
They not only lost their motivational leader, but their operational leader. Nobody was giving them direction. They just became a group of fugitives scattered across the country, and they had to kind of fend for themselves until we ran them all down.
As we started making arrests, we'd interview these people. Some of them would talk, some of them wouldn't. But everybody that would talk, we'd get more and more information. And we were successful in locating everybody.
We really break the back of the order at that point, with Matthews dead, and some of them already indicating that they were going to testify against their friends if it meant they would get a smaller, shorter criminal sentence.
In Seattle, 10 people, all members of a white supremacist group called The Order, are on trial these days. The charges include murder, arson, robbery, counterfeiting, and dealing in stolen property.
Prosecutor Gene Wilson decided, I'm going to make this a RICO case. A RICO case is a federal law that says if an organized group of individuals get together to commit criminal activities for a agreed upon reason, regardless of when they joined or what they did, was guilty of all of the crimes. And of course, it ended up being a laundry list. Bank robberies, armored car robberies, murder, and bombings. The trial lasted about 2 months, and slowly but surely, different order members who had turned against the group came into the courtroom and testified for 3, 4, 5 days and would sit there and point out each one of them.
In Seattle today, 10 members of a neo-Nazi group known as the Order were convicted on racketeering charges.
They were all convicted quite quickly, and I mean, literally within a day. Their sentences varied, but everybody got pretty substantial time.
Prosecutors are delighted with the verdict, which they believe breaks the back of the order once and for all.
The outcome was so rewarding, taking down some of America's worst. I participated in the arrest of the Unabomber. He didn't come close to the potential of these guys.
This was probably the largest criminal spree by any gang in history for many, many years. And after it had all come to an end, there was a general belief amongst the followers of the order that the spirit of the movement, represented by Matthews and his followers, was still very much alive.
At the end time, with Yahweh's blessing, we could have been successful. We will be epic successful. The change will take place.
And then lo and behold, it wasn't long before Timothy McVeigh came along with the Oklahoma City bombing. And he'd read the Turner Diaries, and he'd picked up where he saw Bob Matthews and his group had stopped. So we are able to say with confidence today that those people no longer are a threat to our country. We're not able to say with confidence that the belief system in that philosophy is gone forever, because it's not. It's still here, it's still with us.